If we could get a sound check for our Zoom attendees. Just thumbs up in chat from one or two of you, please.
Yes, we can hear you.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, great. We'll be starting here in about 1 minute. We appreciate everyone's patience. No, it's separate. Yeah, they can hear us. Okay, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our September monthly dinner and virtual meeting. We're happy to have our audience of 40 plus on Zoom and around 60 to 65 here in the conference room. So, welcome back from our summer vacation. We as a board appreciated the time off, and we hope all of you did as well. Slow return back to our new normal, so hopefully everyone had a good summer. We look forward to delivering value to you as members. Our leadership team's motto has always been, we're all about the members, and you'll see that for the rest of the program here. For those on Zoom, we're in a basement dungeon, a beautiful conference space at That's Amore Restaurant, one of the historic landmarks off of Shady Grove Road in Rockville, Maryland. We'll be here at least for the rest of the calendar year 2022, and we hope for 2023. We had been in one place since 2004 at Normandy Farm Restaurant in Potomac, and sadly their ownership group transitioned. Yeah. Okay. We're not working with the best Wi-Fi down here, so we apologize to our virtual members. This will be recorded as a webinar as well, but we'll make sure you get your PDUs. So you're not muted. Yeah, I know. Okay, for those in attendance and those online, we do want to hear your voice. We are in a new venue, so a survey will be sent out tomorrow. So give us feedback on the meal, on your commute. And we can't do anything about your table mates, but give us feedback on that. But we're in a new space. We worked hard on looking at up and down 270 in the county to find a new home. So we'd like to hear how you feel about your experience this evening. Okay, our chapter leadership is still doing good things. This year has flown by, at least for us. I'm not sure for you. So our elections are in November. PMI chapters across the country since the pandemic have struggled to find volunteers and those that want to take that extra step for stewardship within the industry. Now that we're starting to come out of the pandemic a bit, we're starting to get more interest. So we look forward to a good election cycle coming up in November. Stay tuned to your newsletter for more information on that. As you saw in our newsletter communication to you for this event. The DMV Project Management Symposium is being held later this month. This is a PMI WDC driven thing, but it's an effort of all 5 chapters in the area, including Baltimore, Southern Maryland, Silver Spring, us, and then DC is the chairs. This will be Tuesday, September 20th. It is an all-day symposium from 9 to 5. That's all virtual, but there is the face-to-face element afterwards with the networking event at Army Navy Country Club down Columbia Pike in Arlington, Virginia. So that would be a networking cocktail hour, a dinner, and a panel on climate change project management, but an opportunity to meet members from other chapters, represent our chapter, tell them all the good things that we're doing. Maybe that'll drive our membership total up. Since this isn't our chapter sponsored event, there is a charge for those who have been with the chapter for at least a couple of years. We pride ourselves that our education events and symposiums are free of charge to our members. There is a charge here, but there is a discount code for chapter members provided here, as well as we'll send that in our newsletter. So there's a virtual option or the all-inclusive. If you sign up for the all-inclusive and don't make it, you'll be refunded the differential. The 2 keynote speakers for the virtual event are Dr. Ruth Pierce, who's one of the rare lawyers / PMPs. I've actually met a few of them, so I'm not sure if that helps their litigation at all or not, but she'll be presenting on project burnout. I think during the pandemic, we observed burnout in different ways, both with our projects and just being stuck at home. So she has some interesting observations, both pre-pandemic and during the pandemic, to share. And then we, Ms. Renderos, one of the premium executive coaches in the area, will be presenting on company bias towards your rock star. From a show of hands for in the room, who feels that you're your company's rock star? Oh yeah, we got a couple. Who thinks the rock star of the company gets too much praise? Okay, so she'll be covering that in her program. Back to free training, Laura Bernard, our former chapter vice president of finance in the late 2000s, early 2010s, has started her own business the last 5 years, PMO Impact. Her annual summit is later this month. This will be free, virtual with on-demand access. Topics include organizational management, PMO innovation, how PMOs have transitioned during the pandemic, a great slate of speakers. You do have to register and fill out some survey data that she can use, but her newsletters are not every day, and it's a great event to be a part of. Anyone with any jobs to share for their companies? Or anyone looking for a job? Okay. We received an idea from a member for a different kind of job outreach thing, so we're exploring that. But we'll keep you posted on opportunities through our newsletter. Our education partners are back in business with face-to-face offerings as well as virtual offerings. Lisa Hammer and David Newman moved up to the Rehoboth Beach area of Delaware, but are still doing great things and still a friend of the chapter. We look forward to bringing them back next year. Joe Liani, who spoke to us earlier this year before the summer break, who runs Project Management Experts. He'll be one of the speakers at the DMV Symposium. So he always provides engaging, enlightening, and entertaining briefing. As you saw in the last few newsletters, PMI went to a new talent triangle. Because of the change in the talent triangle, some of our batch PDU submissions from earlier didn't process correctly instead of leadership, and that is now business acumen, ways of working. So we resubmitted. We realized we owe you March, May, and June, so we haven't forgotten. You're not the only one, and we hope to get that corrected in the next week. Okay, our speaker for this evening serves as the current chapter vice president of membership. He's also the star of 2 Addams Family TV shows and more than 5 movies. He's the primary antagonist of one Harold Potter and his Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and he's been a spokesperson for Procter & Gamble for the last 64 years and running. So for those who have seen me speak before, one, I'm the pinch hitter when we can't get another speaker, so I didn't earn this opportunity, but I'm happy to be here and hope I earn the privilege of your time. And 2, regardless of whatever abbreviations you have to your name, what you've done in years past, I'm a big believer that it's what you're delivering today and what you can deliver in the future. So past credentials are great. That speaks to who you were, but who you are is something you control on a daily basis. So a little bit of fun with that. Our chapter president, Mr. Edgery, wanted to introduce me, but he'll roast me at the end. So. I will. Okay, so today we're going to talk about citizen development. This isn't so much developing citizens. If that's why you signed up, you may be a little disappointed, but hopefully you'll still walk away with some good knowledge here. And really, we want you to walk away with a better sense of how you can use citizen development to empower yourself to make a change in your organization. If you're an entrepreneur and your organization's yourself, you can still make that change in the offerings that you give. If you're retired and serving more as a mentor in the project management industry, you can take this knowledge and share it with your mentees, share it with your friends. So if we could take a visualization, this isn't a centering exercise. You don't have to close your eyes and say namaste or take off your shoes, but just think back to a time when you saw in a meeting or through just your daily work day what a solution could be, and only if leadership would embrace it, or if you had an influential enough voice to state the idea for a business problem, constraints the organization may have, overcoming issues. And then if you did make that recommendation, that it fell in the suggestion box or fell flat a little bit. That's essentially the spirit of what citizen development can help overcome. For friends of the Big Bang Theory, some insight from our friends in Pasadena, California. Video sharing via Zoom simulcast or Teams or what Google Meet never seems to work appropriately. So we're just captured the quote here. But essentially, it deals with suggestion boxes, and does leaders really take the suggestions that you have? As a Air Force federal employee, the last 4 years, pre-pandemic, we had a suggestion box. It actually got taken and entered into another system, but suggestion boxes aren't essentially the pathway to proficiency and improvements. Has anyone posted anything in the suggestion box that made its way to implementation or being integrated? Okay, no one in the room, so I think that speaks to that. Okay, so what's the problem that citizen development solves? IT backlogs are delayed. IT staffs are only so big right now. They have other priorities. If you have a good idea, they're like, great, who's paying for it and what are your resources? And you're like, yeah, I just have an idea. So that's one problem. From a cost perspective, a lot of ideas come with contracts. If you're a government employee or in the private sector providing solutions to the government or big clients, you have an idea, it comes with a dollar value and a certain amount of FTEs on that contract. So any idea has money associated with it. Nothing's free, we understand that, but at the same time, not every idea has to be a $1 million plus contract. A lack of software developers. Studies right now are predicting that we're going to be short 400,000 or 500,000 software developers in the next few years. We learned through the pandemic that there's workforce problems. The administration's job numbers have gone up, but people are looking at work differently. And as we do return to work initiatives and leadership and the C-suites around the country and the world state, we want people back to work X times a week. A lot of people are like, nope, I'm just looking for telework opportunities. Hopefully over the next 5 or 10 years, those telework and remote work opportunities stay as fruitful as they have been. We've proven to ourselves that we can be more productive at home through tools like Zoom and Microsoft Teams and Google Meet and other collaboration spaces. We've proven the technology's there. The technology wasn't necessarily there prior to March 2020, but it is now. So what's the real return on investment of having people seated in an office? There are some pros, but that's one thing that you have to weigh. Of the software development community isn't as traditional software developers. 20 years ago, those were the emotionally unintelligent, introverted professionals are just like, I do this or I code this. That's changed a little bit, but because of that, it's not as exciting and sexy of a job as it needs to be to provide the supply demand. And then the prioritization of infrastructure. Right now, with cloud environments, just keeping the infrastructure afloat and not having latency is the bigger priority. So that's great that Mr. Taylor has an idea, but compared to in the big pipeline of all the IT problems and the cloud infrastructure and the certifications and keeping everything compliant, his idea for a user experience may not be at the top of the priority list, especially if there's no funding resources. So how do you overcome these problems? So a few learning objectives for today. We'll discuss what citizen development is, not developing citizens, and its role in the 2020s business space. We're presenting this at a PMI chapter because PMI is recently, I think we saw with PMBOK version 7 that they're changing the way it works. They're looking at things. The PMBOK exam itself is catching up, but it's not so much you need to follow this process and initiation to planning, planning to execution, execution to closure with monitoring control sprinkled in. PMI global leadership has observed that's not so much how projects are being ran now. So with PMBOK version 7's update August of 2020, we've seen that change more to principles, and you need to factor these things in, but you can do things different ways. And PMI being the first association to really hop in front of citizen development and apply a curriculum and a rigor. It wasn't the traditional IT associations, it was the Project Management Institute. If you Google citizen development certification, PMI is the first thing that comes up, and there's not much else. So whether or not other associations embrace it and add something else, PMI has been the first. And as someone who's gone through the program, the Air Force paid for it, so That was always a plus, but Anna gave me something to talk about today. So, and then citizen development it's a two-way street. Your organization needs to have a platform that you can develop on. You can groom your skills independently, but ultimately your organization has to have a commitment to a software as a service platform or a platform as a service option. But you being in a more educated, gun-ho state to get them there could be what convinces them to invest in it. Okay, so when my 4-year-old and 9-year-old stepsons ask questions, I'm like, don't ask me, ask Alexa. And if they have a follow-up question after Alexa's response, I'm like, don't seek the easy answer, is essentially what I'm trying to convey there. But with more complex IT solutions, I think a lot of us are trained to go to Gartner, one of the leading IT research firms, who throw these big multi-million-dollar conferences and is the reference foundation and the trusted source for most things in the software as a service cloud environment IT space. So you'll see here, for those in the back that don't want to squint, citizen development is essentially employees that aren't in the IT space. They're not traditional IT people. They don't have degrees in information systems management or what used to be known as computer science. They don't have a laundry list of certifications. They're just a motivated employee within your organization that is open to learning. That's the biggest thing. I'm a big believer no one's born technical. Becoming technical is something that you need to put the work into. You need to be open to learning, to reading. No one comes out of the womb or delivered by the stork as a technical person. But when you meet technical people, like, sometimes they feel that way. And they're like, well, you're not technical. You should listen to me. And it's like, well, so you listen to them, but then once they leave, you roll your eyes and get back to work. So a non-IT person that identifies a solution and is willing to lean in and help develop that solution with user interface, user experience. I think UI UX is a big buzzword right now. So is citizen development. So is no code, low code. Like all these things tie back to being in a position that if you're willing to learn and you can pick things up fairly quickly, you too could be a citizen developer. There's a caveat there that caught my eye when I was doing my research and putting this together was you have to be a legal employee of the organization. I'm guessing they put that in for a reason. So that's great that you want to work for an organization and come up with a solution. But if you're a hacker or a former employee of the organization, being a citizen developer wouldn't be the best opportunity there. Okay, this is Phil and Stormy, and I've been dealing with Excel spreadsheets and data for 21 years now, since my first real job in the Marine Corps in the fall of 2000. In those 20 plus years, the two professionals that knew the most about Excel, I think everybody's office has that Excel master that they can't answer any questions, but they can do it. And they can tell you in an Excel spreadsheet that if you try to copy and paste, it doesn't work anymore.
You're like, there's no way a parakeet and crocodile.
So in my life, Phil and Stormy were those professionals and setting those benchmarks. This is Phil's book of 101 ready-to-use Excel macros. I borrowed this 8 years ago. I don't think Phil's going to watch this presentation, but in his mind, I stole this book. But my point here is citizen development isn't new. We've all had those smart Excel masters or smart Microsoft Access database SMEs that could create something. They couldn't explain it, but they could create it and it worked for your organization. So what's what's the problem with that for those in the room? Transferability, sustainment. If Phil or Stormy leave their position, we have an Excel spreadsheet that never gets updated again, and or we're calling them for a favor and saying, please help us, which I've actually done with Phil and Stormy, and been the guy on my knees of, please, I'll buy you lunch, I'll buy you a bottle of scotch, just help. But the biggest thing is it's not scalable. You can't increase or decrease off of those homegrown solutions because you don't have the expertise, and it's not in a position where it's ready for anyone to take and continue to grow. And organizations evolve, these tools evolve, but a lot of our citizen development, which wasn't called citizen development at the time, it was more homegrown solutions, or this guy has a database that does everything we need him to do. We have the spreadsheet with a bunch of tabs, and we click this run button and it works magic. We need to get away from that. And even in 2022, there's still Microsoft Access databases being used. There's still Excel worksheets, which have so much stuff in it and so many macros that you can't email them because they're such a big file. And you're like, why is this file so big? But that's why it's so big. So with the technology that we have, we still haven't gotten to the point where we're not using those anymore.
Did they get the right
Repeatability.
order, or did they mess up again?
In theory, you have a great solution.
Did they give us the right order, or did they mess up again?
Who?
That
That guy.
No, they got it correct.
could be applied to other elements, and
They
if
always.
it's not in a place to be repeated, then you're not going to be able to use it for other things. And then transparency and training, one person, two people know how to do it. And
I can see it now. Yeah.
that information gets locked in there. Yep. And job security from the perspective of the people who leaned in to learn it, even though Phil doesn't have his book anymore, and he's probably looking for that. So it's a good, the whole knowledge is power quote. There'll be some quotes later in the presentation. Knowledge is power can be a good or a bad thing. In that regard, it's a bad thing when somebody wants the job security and wants to be known as the person that has the solution. Just continue to grow your knowledge, and that be a power element. It's the positive twist of that age-old quote. So. Okay, shadow IT. By show of hands, does anybody know what shadow IT is? Okay, so about a quarter of the room. So shadow IT is essentially IT systems, applications, workarounds without actual approval. So not to incriminate yourself, so we won't do a show of hands, but how many people log off of their VPN to for Google Drive or OneDrive to work, or email them their commercial accounts? We have a couple of people incriminating themselves, emailing themselves for the convenience of it. Looks like we're having a little bit of IT problem. And that's human nature. And when we're in a position where it's either we get the work done and we take a couple workarounds or skirt around it, or we don't get the work done, we're in a place where we want to get the work done and hopefully it doesn't come back on us. That presents risks, of course. There's security threats through data leaks, compliance violations. Somebody may not notice that day, but eventually they will notice. And just saying, well, I need to get the job done may not be a good enough rationale at the time. A 2019 study had 35% of employees reported that they had to work around company policy to get their job done. If you look at your table, a third of your table has felt that way in some regards. So we need to do better. And some examples are access and collaboration spaces, especially during the pandemic, where at the start, Zoom and Microsoft Teams and other things weren't as dependable as they are now. Like, we don't necessarily remember what it was like in April and May of 2020 when we were still trying to get our feet off the ground and, oh, we need Zoom licenses, we need Microsoft Teams licenses, we need to learn how to use Google Meet, but there were some bumps on the road. Okay, so why now for citizen development? It's not necessarily pandemic related. This was starting to become a rising element in 2017, 2018. It's picked up a little bit more during the pandemic because people had more time to learn during the pandemic. I'm one of the people that prior to the pandemic thought if I had an extra 4 or 5 hours a day, I could be a rock star and I could knock out all this stuff and I could do all these things for the chapter. And then the pandemic hit, you have this extra time, but you still didn't achieve what you thought you would if you had extra time. I don't know if anyone else felt like that. There's some people that looked at the pandemic and were that rock star and said, awesome, I have an extra, 10 to 20 hours a week. I'm not sitting in a car anymore, listening to podcasts or WTOP news updates, and I'm going to apply that information, but some didn't. No-code, low-code technologies really started to become more commonplace. It's a buzzword now. Like, you don't have to understand COBOL or Java or Visual Basic scripts or Python to be able to bring solutions to your organization anymore. Prior to the late 2010s, you still had those traditional developers. Some complex solutions still need those developers. There's still plenty of Python programmers, some in this chapter, some here today, that I know are still doing great things. But the ability to be able to work within a templatized user interface to create solutions is now in place and something that the industry is starting to take advantage of. With that, there's been a big explosion in developmental platforms available. We see watching sports that Salesforce is sponsoring a lot more because they have a lot of money. They're able to sponsor and do all the commercials because organizations are paying their license fees for these. How the Salesforce, the ServiceNows, the OutSystems work is it's not so much how much you develop, but the amount of licenses and users that you have. For my Air Force license package, the Air Force is big. It includes retirees, dependents. So we're looking at close to 1 million licenses. So that's where the money comes in. $2 or $3 a license isn't a huge number when you just look at it like that. But when you look at it for the whole enterprise, that's where the money comes in. But with that, you can develop as many solutions as you want. Where they get you is because of the no-code, low-code packaging, they restrict the amount of customizations that you can make. So you're not able to customize everything from what's outside the box, but if you can make those concessions, you're in a place to come up with effective solutions. And it also changes your employee culture and approach to learning. Being in a place where you can make a difference. And if you're not a traditional IT person, but you don't want to start a whole new career and go back in time, which prior to the last couple of years, you at least had to take a couple steps back if you were in the healthcare industry, but wanted to go to IT. Or I know a lot of public and private school teachers who gave that up and became IT. In the Air Force citizen development examples right now, we have chaplain corps citizen developers, priests who are learning how to develop software, which seems like another joke, but it's not. So no need for the courtesy laugh, like this is actually happening. Airmen who are in different career fields, a lot in the human resources, talent management workforce, are coming up with solutions to for case management situations and administrative actions. And was unheard of 10 years prior. When we needed a contractor, we needed a Booz Allen, a Deloitte to do this work. We're starting to get to a place where we can come up with those solutions ourselves. Keith Ferrazzi, wrote a couple books, has a good quote that I don't know about others, but when you listen to podcasts, you read a book, like I keep a Google Drive file and like I'll convey the quote or copy and paste the quote. So it comes in handy when you have to give a presentation. You can just pull some things up. There's a lot of good information out there, like that goes out one ear, out the other, if you're reading, but if you keep them. So you'll see a few of those there in my little quote book. But you have to get things done and make the people around you feel involved, and not just part of the process, but part of the leadership. Citizen development puts the new professional or the intern just out of college, or the professional, well-tenured professional that has 40 or 50 years with the company and may be looking at retirement as a part of that leadership, because they're bringing solutions to the table and trying to improve the product. So that's the power of what citizen development can do. So benefits of citizen development, increased ownership from the business. It's not just IT that says, oh, that's our system, let us know if it doesn't work, but you're stuck with what you have. The business has a more active role. It's not so much administrative project management and just this is how it's going to be, a waterfall schedule. The business can be more a part of it and not just accepting what's given to them. And then they have more input on the analysis and design. Design thinking is another buzzword, human-centered design. We'll go into that in the following slide, but being a part of really thinking about the solution, because the more you put in to the solution before it's made, the more value you'll get out of it. A rapid solution designed to implementation. If you have people on your staff who are willing to lean in and get the majority of the, for a football analogy, going from the end zone to the red zone and getting at least to that 20-yard line state, IT is going to have to come in from a release management perspective at some point to make sure all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed. But up until that point, citizen developers can still make a great impact and get something from nothing to that 80% state in as much time as they have, assuming that technology is available, which reduces costs that you don't, if you only need your IT staff to get that last 20% done, it's cost savings because these citizen developers are already on your staff. You didn't hire them to be citizen developers, that they were already there. You just need to have that culture where they want to bring solutions to the table and they feel that they're embraced and appreciated and they're willing to put the time in to learn. And improve customer experience. If your developers are the ones who are writing the user stories or really understand how the process works and all the roles, you're not going to have that clunky experience. It's going to be more fruitful in terms of what the business needs to accomplish that job. And then going back to the culture change, if your employees feel empowered to make a difference, that changes the culture to a more positive one, more energetic. A lot of companies and organizations have performed some gamification to learning about a platform. Salesforce and ServiceNow have training trackers, and within the organization, you can kind of make it a little bit more competitive. I've seen executives and senior leaders and C-suite members really lean in to lead the way on that and say, if I have time to knock these training modules out to understand how this platform is, then everybody else should. So that leading from the front, I've seen be successful. Okay, there are risks and drawbacks of citizen development. One, lack of integration with the current baseline. That's great that this works for your solution, but does it work? If it doesn't work with the larger baseline, then you're just creating more work, and all your efforts may be for naught because they're not going to integrate it in the overall solution. So you can't just go out on your own. It still has to be under the leadership buy-in, and then understanding the IT constraints. And that's really the power of the PMI program, is the practitioner course and the business architect is making sure that your citizen developers aren't on their own, and they are able to work inside that box and understand the box. The collaboration outside of the citizen development team. You may have a great team, and that's your top priority. That's all you care about. I think we see that in work in the portfolio program and project management world that we're in. We're balancing and juggling like 6 or 7 different things. We have colleagues and peers that are only focused on one thing. That's the most important thing to them. So same with citizen development. This may be the most important thing to you. It's your idea, you're energized, you made promises you may not be able to keep to leadership, but that's your problem and not necessarily everybody else's. So that's one obstacle. Going back to the extra 20%, you can't score a touchdown by yourself within you as a citizen developer or your small team. You're going to need IT support. You're going to need change management support to get buy-in. Are the training materials out there for your solution to be successful? So that's a part of it. Low application quality. Like somebody from the janitorial staff may have a citizen development of when the bathrooms are going to be clean, so it's not during work hours, which is often a problem. Whenever you need the bathroom, the yellow signs that say closed are out there. So this is a good idea that I just came up with. And not to talk ill of janitorial staff, but they're not software developers by trade. What you learn, but the application quality may not be great and top of the line with everything else. So that's when you need a sponsor and to have more support than just, well, you have an idea, here's an account, here's your own sandbox or pipeline, good luck. Duplication with other solutions. You may have a great idea, and depending on how big your organization is, that idea has already been covered by other technology, but you don't know that because in your silo or world, it's an issue. So you put all this time into it, it eventually gets up to your sponsor or C-suite or executive team. They're like, oh, this system does that. Why would we implement this or add this to a release? And then that time was wasted. That's an issue. And then the lack of a value add business impact. Does this really answer a bigger solution? Is this going to be sustainable? Is it something that's going to be released? A few people are excited about it, and 2 years from now, it's something that no one's using or no one understands how it works. And a good project manager doesn't bring problems or issues without solutions. So here's some risk mitigations. In terms of not operating within the baseline, having a proper citizen development integration and oversight team, monitoring the progress, and so they're not headed down the wrong road. And then it's time they're like, okay, I'm 80% done. I need your help. And they're like, yeah, you messed up here, and it was a domino effect. So you're going to have to start over. That's time wasted. The collaboration outside of the team. Going back to that communication early and often, and discuss what a realistic delivery is. That's great that your social calendar or work schedule allows for you to lean into this and get everything done in a week, but that doesn't mean that that's when the solution is going to be released to your colleagues or your audience. So you have to be realistic with your timelines. Keeping your workforce up until the late hours of the evening to get something done, but it's your other dependencies and stakeholders aren't ready for it. You just wasted that time, and that goes back to project burnout. Going back to they can't do it by themselves. Keeping your IT team as an active stakeholder. They're going to be resistant. You're threatening their job. The janitorial staff, the human resources are saying, hey, I can be a software developer too. Whatever job standing or industry you're in, when outsiders come in and just think it's easy, like human nature is, we take offense to that a little bit. So getting their buy-in, and everyone that when you look at your dependencies, when you identify those, cue in on who you need to be bought in and get them on your side early. From a low application quality, our janitor friend with the bathroom schedule, having a subject matter expert that's done this before on your team helps that along. So a mentor, a buddy, as well as developing a center of excellence for citizen development if your organization lends itself for that. In theory, we'd all have PMOs to help us do our jobs, but does it make sense to have a PMO? Do we have the resources? Would we use a PMO correctly? And that's why a lot of organizations don't have PMOs right now. From a duplication perspective, enterprise architecture for those who use it, those who have to use it, and rationalization studies to make sure that everything that your organization does is documented. So when they have this idea, the idea goes through your demand manager or hopper, and if it's already done, you're like, good initiative, but we already have this. Is there a way we can make it better? Don't just shut down the development idea, but don't go down the road of duplication if it doesn't need to be. And then from a value add perspective, same thing. Have enough people on your team understand what the return on investment would be, and is it worth investing in? Okay, and then citizen development's arch enemy is going to be data. If you don't plan accordingly, you have a great idea, but if you need to use the data, your organization's employee data or logistical or maintenance data, you don't just want your solution just to be manual data entry and it's just stored in that. Any citizen development solution should be utilizing the existing data pipelines in your organization, both push and pull, so it's not creating rework or you have redundant data. Data architecture isn't easy. Who here is comfortable and confident in their organization's data architecture, could speak in an educated form on it by a show of hands? Okay, would you like to come up? So yeah, that's a large issue that you need to identify. And some solutions won't have this data problem, but the majority of them do. And that's why you came up with the idea in the first place, to improve it. So you don't want all the data just to be standalone. Access databases, which we're trying to get away from, were those standalone data which weren't communicating with the larger organization. And that's where we get into what we're trying to improve upon. Yesterday, the women's national soccer team was in town playing a friendly against Nigeria. In my opinion, that's one of the best groups that our country has. Their former team captain, Abby Wambach, wrote a great leadership book a couple of years ago and coined a quote: "Leader isn't a title of the world that the world gives to you, it's an offering that you give to the world." And this speaks more to, just because you're not the chief technology officer, chief information officer, chief operating officer, management officer, you can still be a leader within your organization. John Maxwell wrote a book in the mid 2000s called The 360-Degree Leader. A lot of those elements are timeless and still apply 15, 16 years after the book was published. So look at your standing in the organization as you're an employee, so you are a leader, and you can make that change. And citizen development is a small way that you can show that leadership. Okay, this is PMI. So 2 things. 1, it's not going to be free, and 2, there's going to be a process. So getting into the practitioner framework, this is the process, but this isn't anything too new. As software development lifecycle, we've all seen that. That's a big part of the project delivery. One thing that they've coined, and this goes back to the money part of it, PMI is a for-profit organization. Ideation 2.0 is what they've trademarked. We'll get into that a little bit in following slides, but that's essentially going through the full gamut of assessing the idea and making sure that you've thought everything through before you start developing. Because if you didn't have time to do it right, when are you going to have time to do it over? Suitability assessments, where does this fit in? And that kind of counters the duplication. So a lot of what impressed me going through the practitioner micro-credential course was a lot of those risks of citizen development they put in place with their framework to mitigate. The change management piece and the soft side of change. So the change to the organization of the process, and then getting buy-in so everyone accepts that this is a change for the future and not just something that is being forced upon them and, oh, we have to do one more thing. The maturity model is similar to other maturity models that we've seen in terms of discover, experiment, adopt, scale, and innovate. This isn't anything too new to what we've been doing for our IT project managers for the past decades, but it's applying them to this new thought process. And with all the case studies that are in the course, you see how this has been proven and how it's worked. And there's case studies of citizen development efforts that didn't work and why. And I got a lot of value out of that part of the course. Our late friend Steve Jobs came up with a quote after the iPhone release of customers don't often know what they want until you show it to them. You've identified a solution for your organization or your small team. Don't expect your sponsors or your C-suite or your decision makers necessarily to see that vision. You have to show it to them. You have to do your work, but at the same time, it's a slippery slope as you don't necessarily want to go down the road and invest a whole lot of time if it's going to get shot down. So that goes back to prototyping and putting enough in that you can show the value, but not too much that you've wasted effort if you don't get that approval or backing. Okay, going back to the ideation 2.0, I mentioned human-centered design and design thinking earlier, which have been buzzwords the last 10 years. Really thinking through your requirements from both a user perspective to include what are the real pain points and what's the problem that your organization has. Empathy maps have been created, which normally you would think, what's empathy have to do with software? But when you go through a design thinking lesson, you really understand that some of these IT challenges in our workforce and industries, like put our workforce in a bad mood. They take it home, they're frustrated, and we need to account for that. You'll see in sticky notes are here to stay. So I know there's some of us who are like, I get Agile, I get Scrum, but going away from the sticky notes. But I think it's a quick way to identify a thought and capture your team's thoughts. But you'll see here that you need to ask yourself about your solution. Why is this worth doing? Who's going to use that? What a return on investment will it give the users? In terms of the UI and the interface, what will it look and feel like? And then more on the technical side, what's the data needs? What are the constraints? How will we handle the backlog? So it really walks you through all of the things you need to consider. And a vision board as well. A good citizen development program will take, going back to our first slide and our kind of vision of, you've had this good idea of how to fix a problem, but it never got fixed because either you didn't speak up or there wasn't a mechanism in place for the solution to be fixed. So this vision board kind of walks you through of, okay, I have this idea, let me apply it in these pillars to really think it out. And all these come with the practitioner portion of the PMI training that's available. We're project managers, we're program managers, we track things, we have metrics that matter. Citizen development, same thing. You can track the number of applications that you have in a citizen development track. You can track your citizen developers, how active they are, what their proficiency is. From a delivery, from the time you had an idea to the time it got approved, to the time you have your first prototype and your minimal viable product, to the time it's available for everyone. All those are good metrics to track if you have the time. If your citizen development shop is 1 or 2 people, having the time to commit to metrics, just like with all our projects. In a perfect world, I think we'd all have metrics, we'd have everything buttoned up, but we have to pick and choose what the priorities are. But they provide some great ideas and great examples and how you can track these metrics. So they've thought that through as well. Okay, so that walked you through what the PMI curriculum offering is. Now we get to the point of if you're still awake and you're curious enough of, yeah, this sounds like a good idea, or if you've thought about, oh, I have this idea about what my organization could use. So like I said earlier, not every organization is going to be in a place where citizen developers can be effective because they need that platform and canvas to work from. If your organization has Salesforce in any instances or license structure, most license packages come with either 50 or 100 sandbox environments that you can play in, develop in, learn from, and garner ideas. From a training perspective, Salesforce wants people to be familiar with the platform, be proficient with the platform, so they can you go to your organization and say, we need to use Salesforce, or if you have it, we need to keep Salesforce. So their training module called Salesforce Trailhead's free for any interested party with a valid email. That gives you access to more than 3,000 modules and projects, super projects, so you can really master at least how the platform works. Not necessarily your idea, but how the platform works. There's over 35 formal certifications. I think we've all come across some Salesforce professional that you looked at their LinkedIn profile and they have like 8 certifications. You're like, how'd they do that? Did they just give them out to everybody? No, the tests are actually hard. But they have all those tracks, so you just don't have to pick one to be of value to your organization. And you get a complimentary sandbox. So if you do have an idea right now and over the weekend, you create an account and just start to play around with how easy would it be to implement this idea, just to see if citizen development's viable for your organization, or maybe it's even a personal project with one of your side businesses or ventures. It gives you that opportunity with little restrictions to work with the full power of the platform, and that's free for anyone. For prior military or active military, there's some advantages with discounted and free test vouchers. So for those who fall in that category, that's another return on investment. ServiceNow is also a leader in the customer relationship management, service management, software as a service field. Same thing, their training is called Learning Now. All free training, over 750 courses, labs, things of that nature. Certification exams are at a cost, but not much. Most of these exams are $100, $200 tops. So not that that's chump change, but it's not this CISSP like $800 test, or even the PMP, which could be around $500 for non-members. So it's affordable. And they also offer live classes. OutSystems is another in the low-code software development space. They also have a free training module, smaller platform, 100 courses. But the advantage of OutSystems is it gives you a little bit more flexibility, and you're not restricted to just out-of-the-box technology. And we'd be remiss if we didn't know that Microsoft was still competing in this environment, because if there's money to be had, Microsoft is going to try to have their place. So their offering is called Microsoft Power Platform, with a lot of Microsoft technology. If you click on the Learn tab, training's free, but certification exams will come at a cost. So plenty of options. If you've heard in staff meetings or all calls, your organizations talk about any of these, that means there's probably an opportunity for you to come up with a citizen development approach. If you do have a small business, these solutions aren't overly expensive, from like 10 to 20 licenses. So I don't want to scare you off that the license structures are so expensive. It just depends on how many employees or users you're servicing. On time. Okay, like I said, nothing in PMI is free, or if it is, there's a catch. Our November dinner is free, however, as we appreciate our members. So we'll be back in this space the first Wednesday of November. The screen will be pushed back because we'll have another 150 of your closest friends here. So we look forward to seeing everyone back there. It's only free for members, but at a $20 annual member due fee. It makes a lovely gift. So we look forward to seeing everyone in November. So you'll see here the entire program. If you go from the foundations course up to the practitioner course, foundation course is just going to be a 2-hour kind of 101. A lot of what you've heard here today expounded a little bit. 2 PDUs and the ways of working in business document model. That's less than $100. A good investment if this presentation appealed to you at all. If it appealed to you a lot, go in the practitioner route, which goes more into those case studies I talked about and proven examples in the past 5 years of where citizen development's worked and hasn't worked. And through that practitioner journey, you're on the side coming up with your own kind of project and idea for your own organization or personal life. That gives you up to 6 PDUs, and at $250, sizable investment. With PMI's come out with the micro credentials the last 5 or 6 years, and we're not really sure what the return on investment is. Some feel that even a PMP doesn't have that much return on investment in terms of your resume or your salary these days. So what a micro credential means, other than more initials after your name, we're really not sure yet, but that's what you get with this. So. And then the business architect takes more of looking at your operating and maturity models. This would be more not being a citizen developer, but leading a citizen development shop or a center of excellence. If you're in a position where you could sponsor this and kind of see it through from a strategic oversight perspective, that business architect course would provide you more fidelity and tools and techniques for that. You have to go through the practitioner one first for that. So that's a prerequisite, and that takes you up to 8 PDs. Again, they're in it for the money. But all three of them combined, less than $800. So, okay, so in summary, volunteering for anything comes with risk, but great reward. If you leave this room or the virtual space and go to your employer tomorrow and be like, yeah, I got this great idea, they'll be like, great, you're in charge of it, and if it fails, we're going to blame you. So that's the risk. So keep that in mind, but at least let this simmer, think about it, go back to that visualization exercise at the beginning of the problem that you have in your current work environments, and would a citizen development solution help with that. And I think the future is really having more state in your organization success. We're just not, if you're on the lower end of the totem pole, you can still make a difference. So I think that's the hope that citizen development gives us. We hope it gets more traction. The fact that PMI is invested in it to this degree with 2 micro credentials really speaks to what they believe that it can be. And the jury's still out, but we've seen it be successful thus far, so I don't see why it can't continue to grow. Any questions, comments? Yes, sir.
Citizen development opportunities in like a service now environment, Salesforce, because somebody can say, oh, I want to develop a plugin.
Yep. So our question for those virtually and those in the back of the room was, are there more opportunities for citizen development in Salesforce or ServiceNow? Yes, because there's more out-of-the-box functionality to be done. Case management solutions make more sense than Salesforce. You submit inquiry, it goes to HR tech or somebody who has an answer, they reply back to it. So that kind of more case systems are a good, easy fit for Salesforce, that a lot of the coding's already done. You just have to customize. If you're on the service side, ServiceNow has all that built in as well. So PMI is going to look at this as a platform agnostic. They're not going to get into what things to use. I can at least be an initial resource to introduce you to some examples of what's worked with what I've seen. But yeah, each of them have a value add of what makes sense. Okay. Well, I hope I earned the privilege of your time. Now for closing remarks, our chapter president, Mr. Gene Edrick.
Thanks, Matt. So this is the inaugural first dinner at a new place. We've been very used to Normandy Farms. I think we actually got lucky finding a place that was able to accommodate us, good food. Anyone who has any comments, feel free to email Matt, email myself, or Charlie. But that's Amore. They really worked hard to put this together and make us happy. So a round of applause for the staff here. So Matt took a little bit of my thunder away talking about the November dinner, but let me talk a little bit about the rest of the year. So we as a board talked about the cost of the dinners going forward, at least for the rest of this year. For those of you who know, or maybe you can do some math in your head, we charge $10 for each of you for the dinner tonight. The dinner that you ate, trust me, cost us more than $10. Okay. So, you know, you can't even spend $10 and get a Happy Meal anymore, right? So we've decided as a board to continue with the $10 the $10 dinner meetings for the remainder of the year, okay? With the exception of the November dinner meeting that Matt announced, which is our member appreciation free dinner meeting. And that will, again, as Matt had mentioned, be more than just the people you look around. We tend to somehow, I don't know how it happens, but for that dinner meeting, we end up getting like 300 people, okay? So we are going to, if you look around the room, folks that are on the phone, you're gonna have to trust me on this one. We have a lot more capacity in this room. So we can hold very close to 300 people in this room. And we will max out capacity for the November meeting. So mark that on your calendar. Please be here, tell your friends. Hopefully we'll get a really great showing for that as well. So other announcements, we've lost some folks on the board for various reasons. They've had work commitments come up, etc. So we've been operating with kind of a skeleton crew for a little while now. We've reached out to some folks and offered some positions, but we do need folks to step up. This is prior to the elections that are going to be in the beginning of the year. So we're going to have elections again, but there's still a lot of time before the end of the year and we need to help. So we need some folks that might help us out with Vice President of Education. Those are the folks that find and set up the speakers, right? So we were lucky enough tonight to have Matt be brave enough to step up. And yeah, he would not allow me to introduce him because he knew I've got some really good stuff I'd like to say. And for those of you, I don't even know if he's on the phone, Dr. Scott Chen, a lot of times when we've had our project symposiums, I introduced him and told everybody about the Nobel Prizes he won and cage fighting and all kinds of other stuff that he did. So that's just another thing. Oh, he's on, great. So if you do not provide me with a good bio, I will make one up for you. Just saying. So yeah, we have some a need for some folks to help us out, line up some speakers for the rest of the year. Okay, and going forward, we like to put together almost a year in advance our speakers, and we like to go too deep. So we'll have those formal elections, but if you're looking, have the bandwidth availability to help us out for the next couple months, we would really appreciate it. Contact any member of the board. Feel free to reach out to me as well, but really could use your help. All right. Other than that, really appreciate you all being members of our chapter. As Matt had said, and Charlie actually coined the phrase, it's all about the members. That's why we're here. We're not the kind of board that goes out and spends money on the board and does things like that. We plow all the money back into the chapter for all of you so you can have these, reasonably priced dinners, right? All right. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great rest of the evening. Please be safe going home, and we'll see you in October. Thank you.
So